We are back for Will Chat number 5, and we're discussing something that kind of scares a couple of people, not just a couple, probably a lot of people.
Us.
Yeah, it did at one point. Dry needling. And I think it was one of our patients the other day actually said, why do they call it dry needling? That's going to scare everybody away. And then we thought we probably need to educate the public on what dry needling is.
I remember when we first learned how, I really didn't sleep for like 2 or 3 nights before we went because I am terrified of needles. I mean, my family makes fun of me for it. Sweat, pass out. I had a seizure one time when I had a blood draw. So I just was terrified. And we got to class, and the first thing we had to do was
Poke ourselves.
stick ourselves.
Yeah, we had to. So the gentleman that was running the class, he said, okay, everybody, we usually have one person that doesn't do well with this, maybe passes out or it is on the floor, and we're both there thinking, we are tough ladies.
Seriously, I thought it was going to be me passing out because I always do.
Well, no, it was me. Yeah. So I take that needle and I poke it into my quad. Didn't hurt, not one bit, but woo, started seeing stars, and spent 30 minutes on the floor in front of my whole class, mind you. 30 minutes with the pillow on the floor listening to the instructor because I couldn't get back up. So, and so let's talk about what happened with me.
What response was that?
It's called your autonomic response. And this is the autonomic nervous system is a really important part of our fight or flight mechanism. So you've heard that term before, your fight or flight or your rest and digest. And so those are 2 very important parts of your autonomic nervous system. When our adrenaline builds up, which is what had happened, you go into that fight or flight mode. And so your body responds by increased heart rate. It's like you're being chased by a dog and sweating profusely. And those are all very normal sympathetic nervous system responses. But the end goal is to elicit the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest systems. And so
increase blood flow, relax the respiration.
It actually, when we have done needling, it feels like when your parasympathetic nervous system is turned on, like the only best way to describe it is that you've had a glass of wine. You just feel relaxed, completely relaxed. And think about it too. So if you've ever been in that really high stress situation, have you?
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd pass out.
Yeah.
Super easy.
But afterwards, you usually feel like you can catch your breath, and you almost feel like you want to go to bed because it was just so much at once.
Traumatic.
So that is your sympathetic starting with that fight or flight, and then you go into parasympathetic and you go into rest or digest. So how does all of that relate to this scary dry needling subject?
Right. And could we call it something else?
Yeah.
I wish we could call it something else, because then you guys wouldn't be scared of it.
Yes. So we need to think of a good name for it. But right now, it is dry needling, and we get a lot of questions on, is it the same as acupuncture? So what would you say to that?
Similar to acupuncture because we use the same needles, but our objective tissue is different. So acupuncturists go to school for all the years that they go to be acupuncturists, and physical therapists use dry needling to activate areas of tension in muscle, in tendons, and ligaments. And so
it's specifically the fascia.
Yeah, and the fascia, so that we can affect those areas that are causing pain.
And restrictions. A lot of times, a lot of restrictions that are causing the pain.
Yeah,
so
areas where you have a lot of scar tissue. We treat a lot of scar tissue areas, trigger points. Post-exercise, like sometimes you get a really sore muscle. This works really well for that too.
A lot of research that's been done to actually show that the dry needling and how it brings white blood cells, which we want. So when you have an inflammation process, you bring white blood cells to the area, and that's healthy. That's what we want because it's going to help that hair area heal like it's supposed to. And so that's kind of what the dry needling is supposed to do. And a little history, I didn't know this before the class that we took, It's called dry because there was such a thing, or there is such a thing as wet needling. And wet needling is with lidocaine.
And that lady did the study.
And they did a study to see if you wet needle, so put lidocaine on a needle into that trigger point.
So they inject an actual substance through the needle.
Or if you just put a needle that had nothing on it, do you get a similar response? And it was.
Every single response was the same. Every single person that had it in the injection, whether it with saline or with nothing, had a positive response. And so they decided that it was the actual puncture that caused the
response
reduction, the response. So that's pretty cool.
So that kind of sums up a little bit about what dry needling is. Like we said, we are not acupuncturists, but we are physical therapists that have been trained in dry needling. And one of the things that particularly is of interest to us, obviously the muscles and the tendons, ligaments, things like that, but the fascia, Dr. Rigsby's going to show you on her.
So here is the fascia that looks like a spider web. You see all the thin filament-like threads. These get disarrayed whenever we have pain.
To explain how I kind of made it make sense to me. So I've always explained it like you're cutting chicken, and the white stuff that's on top of the chicken, and you're trying to remove that. Well, that is fascia. So most people understand that. But the other day, my daughter had put something in the dryer, and it had a loose thread on it. And so in the dryer, obviously, I know moms, you know this, the thread came out and it wrapped around another article of clothing. So she comes to me and she's got a shirt over here and a pair of shorts over here that are connected by this one thread, and she cannot get it apart. Well, I mean, I was able to loosen it, or let's just say cut it with a pair of scissors, cut that string, and what happened? Boom, I had two separate, I didn't have to unravel anymore. And for me, it was like, seriously, I know my brain is weird and I'm a kind of a nerd because this is what I think about all the time. That is how fascia is. Once you unravel, even though there was like 20 threads around that, once I got that one, it was like the whole thing just released. And that's what's happening with our muscles when we get in there with that needle.
And we actually can feel that happening when we dry needle. That's really cool to feel it, the effect that we have immediately on the tissue.
Wanted to share with you why we want to do dry needling, because some of you might wonder, well, would I be a candidate for it? And then if you're not faint of heart, and you may think that you're tough like I did, just know that we're going to show you some dry needling so that you can at least be aware of what it is before you actually ask for it. So why would someone come in for dry needling?
Lots of reasons that they come in for dry needling. I know one of the reasons why we wanted to get into this, and we've talked about it a lot, in our country is really working hard at the opioid crisis. There's so many people with pain, and we pop pills because it'll take the pain away. It's a Band-Aid. The problem with it is that these meds are addictive, and they just are a Band-Aid. And the things that are causing the pain only make it get worse, because if you can't feel pain, you can't fix what's causing the pain. So if there's a mechanical issue, you need to feel it so that you can make an adjustment to your body so that you can keep more of the degradation from happening, or the things that cause more pain. So I know one of the reasons why I was really interested in dry needling is because I wanted to give people another avenue, because it does release opioids. And I know that Miss Austin talks a lot about this opioid release in our body. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, so endogenous opioids, those are a really important mechanism for you to understand. Endogenous just means that our body naturally creates what we would call opioids. And if you think of morphine, and what are we giving morphine for? Pain relief, okay? So morphine is an opioid. So our body naturally creates those things in the central nervous system. Our central nervous system is our spinal cord, our brain. There's a lot to it. I won't get into that in this discussion, but we actually make these opioids that mimic heroin, that mimic morphine, the meds that we take, and it controls the pain and other things. It does a lot of other things, but it controls it. And these things are made in our pituitary gland, lots of different places, central nervous system, pituitary gland, sometimes in our adrenals. But the fascinating part is that if we can get our body to make these on its own, you're not going to need the things that you can get that are not made from our body. And oftentimes the crisis, the opioid crisis, actually comes from that we take these meds so much that our body doesn't know how to respond without them. And so it doesn't know how to make its own. So we need to let our body make its own. So that's the cool thing about dry needling is we're actually inducing the endogenous opioid system to start making its own pain management. And
that is so incredibly cool that our bodies are made like this, that we have a natural ability to do that. But if we mask those abilities, how do we get those natural responses?
And sometimes when we take medicine, not only are we masking it, but our body is not forced to make it anymore. It's pain as a symptom of something else, okay?
It's almost like a friend. I mean, it needs to be a friend to you. Pain tells us we have to change something. And so your friend would tell you if you needed to change something too, so that you didn't go around just breaking yourself down in other people. Why do we let ourselves do it to our own bodies? So besides the chronic pain and the opioid crisis, it's also really good, I think, that we wanted to do this for the athletic population.
For performance.
Yeah, because sometimes we work out really hard and we strain a muscle, and we have parts of our tissue that are stuck together and they just don't want to release. Studies show that dry needling helps improve performance and it helps improve recovery. So that's another reason why I feel like dry needling is a great choice as far as intervention for therapy.
Right.
We're going to set Sarah up and show you how this is done. At first I'm going to show you the needle and kind of what it looks like compared to, say, a paper clip, so you can see what the needle's like.
I wanted to show you the muscle that I'm actually going to needle on Miss Austin. This is the tensor fascia lata muscle that flexes the hip, and it inserts into the longest tendon in the body, which is actually where I'm going to insert the needle. This tendon runs from where it inserts in those muscles down to the knee. The gluteus muscle also inserts in this long band, so it's a very important part of our anatomy. And Miss Austin will talk a little bit about how it affects runners. Okay, so here we see Sarah. She's got her hand on her hip up here. The IT band, we get a muscle, the glute muscle, from the back, and the tensor fascia lata from the front, come in and attach to this long tendon that runs all the way down the side of the leg to just below the knee onto the fibular head and the tibia. And so that long band is the longest band of tendon in the body.
And this gets really tight, oftentimes in runners especially. So a lot of runners will say that my IT band is tight and they try to roll it out. And there's actually been studies that have shown that oftentimes that's not a true fix anymore.
Good. Would you say we've had success with this using the dry needling?
Yes. I would tell you, first off, my daughter actually has issues with this, and when she's worked out really hard and she can tell that it's getting tighter and tighter, especially as she hit growth spurts especially, we were able to needle that area and almost immediate pain relief, and she hates needles.
And then I'm actually going to insert one in her.
So here I'm going to prep her skin. This is along the long tendon band, that IT band I showed you and we just talked about. So we alcoholed it off, and I've got my gloves on, and here's the needle in the casing. I'm palpating for a sore spot, which she indicates is painful. And then I put the tube up next to the skin, click it, and then I tap it in. Super easy. You can see as Sarah's breathing that the needles move. Just as she's breathing, she's not moving anything but her chest up and down. But you can see the change in the needle. It's super cool. Your body's fascia just goes from head to toe.
So that kind of sums up a little bit about what dry needling is. Like we said, we are not acupuncturists, but we are physical therapists that have been trained in dry needling. So we're both very passionate about this. This has become part of our everyday belief system and values, as you can see. So we want to show you a little bit about this so that you won't be terrified when you come in. And if you have any questions, call a physical therapist that does dry needling, or a chiropractor, or a doctor, anybody that does it. Call them and ask them questions about it. Guys can call us. So we're not the only ones that do this, and it's just something that we have found that works really, really well. And we have a certain technique that we use, and everybody's going to have a different way. So find somebody that works well for you.